Welcome to the Dr. Mudgil podcast. This is episode 211. We are in the holiday season officially. Thanksgiving is behind us. Christmas is upon us. It is cold and wintry here. We didn't get any snow here in New York City, but it's really, really cold. It was like legit frost on my grass this morning when I was dropping my little guy off at school. So it definitely feels like Christmas season. Had a great Thanksgiving weekend. My daughter was home from school, and we had a nice time as a family. We put up our Christmas tree, and I decorated it this past weekend, so that was a lot of fun. I obsess over these things, and I certainly obsessed over it, and I'm very happy with the way it came out. So that was really nice, and just soaking in the beginning of winter here. Basketball season started, so my middle guy's on the varsity basketball team in our town, and their season is underway, so that's been a lot of fun. He had his first game on Tuesdays, and another game tomorrow, which is Friday. This is Thursday, the Thursday before this podcast is going to come out. So let's get into it. So I have it's going to be another story time situation. I have a couple of stories to share with you guys. The first of which is a buddy of mine sent an article it's like a small group chat that we have with a couple of my buddies who are fellow dermatologists. And it was an article in the Free Press. And if I have that Apple News app, which I subscribe to, so I get to read a lot of these like neat little articles that I wouldn't normally have access to. And I'm glad he sent it to me because it actually had me thinking quite a bit. So it was actually a very cool thing that they did. So Keith McNally, who is the owner of several restaurants in New York City, one of which is called Balthazar, which is kind of like a famous restaurant in Soho. He wrote an article about his personal immigrant story. He came to the United States in 1975. It's a classic immigrant story. Kind of like worked his way up through the restaurant industry, and then opened his restaurant, and is now obviously incredibly successful. He has some of the most successful restaurants in New York City. And so he shared a short article about his story as an immigrant, and a parallel article was written by one of his employees who was an immigrant from Senegal who came, I think it was like in 1987 or so. And he was the bathroom attendant in Balthazar, and now he works as a busboy there. But he shared his personal immigrant story. I'm not going to read the articles to you guys, but we'll put the link to the article in the description. Hopefully you'll have a chance to, you'll have access to it, or you can probably find it somewhere online. It's worthwhile to read actually both of these articles. But I'm just going to read you like a little snippet of the description of the article. So it's the article from the Senegali immigrant is titled, "What the Bathroom at Balthazar Taught Me About America. I came to this country looking for fortune. Instead, I found belonging in a place most people never bother to look." Keith McNally is the most famous restaurateur in the city, in a city full of them. Today, he writes in our pages about coming from nothing and rising to the top of New York City's restaurant world. But there's another immigrant New Yorker who works at the beating heart of McNally's bustling Balthazar. His name is Cheku Niani, and below he shares his story of coming to America and hacking it in the Big Apple. Today, we're proud to publish these two very different immigrant stories together, the busboy and the boss, united by pride in their work and by the American dream. And it's written by the editors of this publication called the Free Press. And I'm going to spare you the article, but you should definitely check it out. You should actually read both of them, Keith McNally's story and this gentleman from Senegal's story. They're both very, very inspiring in different ways. One sort of captures the immigrant who came here with nothing and became like a tremendous financial success and restaurateur. And the other immigrant story is sort of like a more typical immigrant story, I think. Someone who comes here also with nothing and just kind of hustle and grinds their way and is able to forge a very fulfilling life here. A tough life, sort of the foundation of which is like, literally grinding away and, just sort of the classic immigrant hustle. But yet being able to forge a life for him and his family and his kids. I think he has 3 or 4 kids. I can't remember the exact number. But they're both beautiful, beautiful stories. And, both share the sense of community that they've developed while being here, yada, yada, yada. I mean, they're really, really wonderful stories and worth reading. Why am I setting this podcast up with that? Because on the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, so Wednesday night last week, the manager of my cleaning crew sent me a text and said, "Hey, Doc, there's a problem. at the office, one of the drain lines is clogged, and you're going to need to get a plumber in there. And this was like Wednesday at like probably 8 o'clock at night. Thanksgiving's the next day. But I reached out to my amazing office manager, and I sent this message to her, say, hey, there's a problem at the office. We're going to need to get a plumber into the office tomorrow or sometime in the next couple of days, because the next day was actually Thanksgiving Day, Thanksgiving holiday. But somehow she was able to work some magic, and we got a plumber who's actually the company that we use had been to our office a couple of times in the past for a similar situation. And the plumber met me at 8:30 in the morning on Thanksgiving Day. I couldn't be, more happy to have this issue resolved so quickly. It was incredible that they were able to come so quickly. But what was amazing was it was a very, very young man that was here. He was, he must have been like, I don't know, maybe 21 or 22, really, really young guy. And he met me outside of my office, and I let him in. And there was like something very familiar about him. I was like, yeah, he looked so familiar to me. But I couldn't quite place it. And I was sort of hanging out in my office while he was doing his thing, clearing this clogged drain. And, he was, very, spoke beautiful English and was kind of explaining to me what he's doing. Or I'm going to have to get some big device out for the main drain line, and then some other smaller device out that's going to clear the drains that are, leading up to the big drain, and gave me the whole play-by-play. And it finally occurred to me. I said to him, I said, hey, were you in this office with another person, maybe 4 or 5 years ago as the apprentice? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I've been here before. I was the assistant, and now I'm running my own show. He basically goes out on his own and does all these big jobs. And I said, that's amazing, because I remember you, and I remember that the last time you were here, you didn't speak any English at all. You could barely speak English, and you were helping out, I guess, the supervisor, and now you're a supervisor. And it was just incredible to see that. It was probably, like I said, 4 or 5 years ago, to see that development in 4 to 5 years. He was probably a high school kid or a teenager when I saw him initially, and now he's a young man, probably like I said, 20, 21, 22. And he was he was here by himself, and he managed this job, and he cleared the drain, and he did a beautiful job, and cleaned up, and it was just superior service. And I was so impressed. But the most impressive part of this was this guy's story. So I ended up bullshitting with him for a little while after he was done. And he kind of gave me a bit of his life story. He grew up in El Salvador on a farm, and, he came here when he was 13 or 14 and couldn't speak any English for, many, many years. And, kind of got through the schooling system. I don't know if he graduated high school or not. We didn't get that far into the story. But he said he started apprenticing in this plumbing company, and, he would just follow a supervisor essentially around on jobs and learn the trade. And then as he learned the trade, he started doing jobs independently, and his English has improved through those years. And it was an amazing story. And, when I was speaking with this young man, his name's Luis. When I was speaking with Luis, I'd actually read this article, or these 2 articles, a couple of days before, because that's when my friend sent it to me. So I was sort of speaking to this young man, Luis, in the context of having just read these 2 amazing immigrant stories. And I was like, before my very eyes here is an amazing immigrant story. And, it's amazing how successful he's become, how proficient he's become at his job. Just his mastery of English alone blew my mind. It was incredible. And it had me thinking, and this was actually on Thanksgiving Day, that this country is very, very divided. It's very divided politically. It's this racial divides, ethnic divides, religious divides. Anything that you read is so polarizing, whether you're watching the news or reading the newspaper. But despite all of that, this is the best country in the world. People come to America to searching for the American dream, which is very much available. I mean, look at this young man who came here, couldn't speak any English, and now he's, doing very well in his career, and he's working independently, has a perfect command of the English language. This gentleman from Senegal who came and developed his life here, Keith McNally, who's this famous restaurateur. All of these folks were immigrants, and they came here to the United States in search of the American dream very similar to my mom, who came here in like 1970 in search of the American dream. And because of the opportunities this country afforded her, she was able to escape a dreadful marriage. If you have the chance, you should check out my very first podcast with my mom, where she shares her amazing story. She was able to raise 2 boys on her own as a single mother and put us both through medical school. She joined the U.S. Army Reserves and was a colonel in the Army, rose to the rank of colonel. Could have been a general too, but I don't think she didn't want to do it because it was too much paperwork involved once you hit that rank. But colonel, not too shabby. And only in America can someone do that. Folks come here from all over the world, from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, to America in search of the American dream, where, it's the opportunities and the potential are endless. And, you don't see folks going in the other direction. You don't see folks leaving America to go to Africa, Europe, Asia. Sure, they go maybe to travel, but no one's going there in search of the whatever country dream. There's one dream that people from all around the world come searching for, and that's the American dream. And as divided as our country may be, as divided as it may seem, the truth is there's no better place in the world. This is where folks come, to search and to enable whatever their dreams may be. And that's something that's important for all of us to remember and to remind ourselves, because this is the best place in the world, and we should believe it's the best place in the world, and we should continue to groom the very best place in the world to live. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful, restful weekend and are just ready to crush the weeks ahead. Let's get it.